the code. End of the conference, you'll get a list of what you went to. This session is scheduled to go from 9:15 until 10:15. Your speakers for this session are Derek Sharp, Ali Walters, and me, Ariel Frower. Derek has a history of implementing digital delivery processes and streamlining data management. Since 2019, he has supported the Utah Department of Transportation with the implementation of digital delivery processes for transportation, utilities, and right-of-way. He's currently working with the Texas Department of Transportation to apply his knowledge in the development and implementation of their digital delivery process. Derek has 17 years of experience implementing complex data solutions for state and local government agencies. His vast experience allows him to develop custom spatial data solutions that model clients' business processes. Ali Walters is part of Kimley Horn's National Digital Delivery Team with an emphasis on roadway design, training, and standards development. Serving Utah DOT, she has piloted new digital delivery processes on final design projects, led the revisions of the model development standards, and the implementation of an asset management system for right-of-way design. Currently, Ali is the roadway lead on the consultation team for TxDOT's digital delivery program. I'm Ariel. I've been with UDOT since 2021, and before that I worked as a roadway designer on a variety of transportation projects, including several digital delivery projects. I think with that, I'll turn it over to Ali to get started.
All right. If it gets warm, feel free to open the door. But no, it's great that Ariel gave herself such a modest introduction, because I just wanted to take a minute to say, as a conference coordinator, she's been running around and putting up with us changing our presentation, or maybe just me, changing our presentation at the last minute. So if you guys could give her a round of applause, she's doing great work. So we're really excited today to share with you some of our lessons learned and our thoughts on design review for digital delivery. So first, we want to lay out the challenges to digital design review, and then I'm going to present the fundamentals. I really think it's important that if we understand these fundamentals, it helps us develop standards and complete training and really get the adoption that we want for digital delivery. And then Ariel and Derek are going to go into some awesome demos and challenges and benefits from some of these tools. So we're going to dive into doing design review in native CAD software, PDF roll plots, an expansion of the plan set, and then some 3D review platforms and GIS. So with that, challenges to digital design review. So we don't have to get rid of the plan sheets, but one of the benefits of going digital delivery is saving that time in plan sheet production, right? In some of the work we've done with the model development standards in Utah, we looked at these model use cases and felt that you could do some aspects of digital delivery without reducing and eliminating the plan sheets, but it's where you get a lot of the cost savings. And so when we take out the plan sheets, we're then stuck with the challenge of how do we do the traditional review? So since long before me, plan sheets have been working, right? They've met the needs of everyone. And so what we're going to look at today is some of those users and think about how we can meet their needs in different ways. We also have new model deliverables. So now we are signing and sealing models. Okay, how do we complete that review when we can't take that PDF that doesn't change with time, right? CAD files, a little bit more fickle. They're easy to change. So there's a complex process there to verifying these new model deliverables. And then two specific challenges. How do we track comments? And then how do we communicate our design intent in these new ways? So the first thing we want to think about is, who is your end user for your model? So UDOT's model development standards looks at this a little bit when you get to chapter 4. It's a great reference for other DOTs if you guys want to dive into it. But if we think about who the end user is, we can make sure that we're meeting their needs. So here's a few that we have. We've got the owners and stakeholders, like many of you, DOTs. Think about the cities and counties that you coordinate with. If we find a platform that works for a DOT, but then it's too complicated or access controls don't work for the city, we need to be aware of those things. And then we've still got our third-party utilities, right? How do we coordinate with conflicts and property owners for right-of-way and things like that? One of the biggest challenges is the engineer of records, for the signing and sealing component. One of the reasons that I do feel so passionate about this topic is, last year during UDOT's conference, we talked about model development standards, And afterwards, an engineer came up to me and said, how can I sign and seal these if I don't know what's changing, right? This is one of our biggest challenges to digital delivery. And we also have, of course, our contractors, right? What we're here and doing it all for is the construction. And then inspection. And so once we know who our end users are, we need to think about what they're going to do with the models. In the industry, this is often called the model use case, but it's the why. So we've got owner acceptance. How does a DOT or a city make sure that their design standards are met, that the scope of the project is met, and that they're okay with the impacts? We also have, of course, right-of-way clearance, utility coordination, and public engagement. Make sure I leave you guys plenty of fun demo time. But yeah, so for the engineer of record, like I talked about, that QC component, right? It's a huge challenge. We also have to estimate, though, and make sure that as we move into a new platform, we've got new tools for estimating. We've got the contractors. They need to be able to do the same things they did before with plan sheets. And how are they going to do that? And I think one thing I skimmed over a little bit was this definition of design review. And so I just want to take a moment to step back and say that as we're going into design review today, it's really about how do you consume the design. It's not at a specific milestone review like 30, 60, 90. It's more about throughout the whole project life cycle, how are we consuming that design? So when we think about construction, you've got the bidding process, the actual construction, and then of course our favorite digital delivery method, which is the automated machine guidance. And so we need to make sure that they can consume the design. And then for inspectors, you know, with taking out the plan sheets, that's been one of the huge impacts, right? That's how they've gone through and verified that something's been built and can pay it. So when we take the plan sheets out, we have to be prepared to have a solution for them. So thinking about who's going to use it, why they need it. Last, we get to my simple little formula here. What do they need, and how can we get to a successful design review? So at first, I had a list of a bunch of requirements, and my good friend said, each DOT is different. Let's not show them UDOT's requirements that we found, but more so just explain that, you know, you're all going to have to go out and talk to these end users. What is it that you use in the plan set? You know, of course, we need the location, geospatial. We need to know the geometry, but what standards are important? Maybe there's calculations, data, you know, curb data, right? Of course. But once we understand what those requirements are, we can make sure that they're still in the complete design package. One thing that UDOT's done really well is put together standards for their deliverables, and that helps for creating that repeatable process, right? So that when the contractors do get this new package, they understand where to go to look for new information, right? Because we've changed things now. So a couple standards that have been helpful have been the CAD standards, namely for brake lines. They've got some great documentation if folks want to see what they're doing on UDOT's digital delivery website for their brake lines, naming conventions, and being able to really communicate seamlessly with the contractors. As well as annotation guidance. So as we get rid of the plan sheets, there's still a need for us to put some annotation in there. Even as our software evolves to the point where the item types and the metadata transfer from one software to the next seamlessly, we're still going to have subcontractors that aren't using the latest software, and we know that. And so contractors have given us that feedback that they want designers to be the ones putting the annotation together so that they're not guessing, right? We make sure that we've got a solid communication and that design intent carries through. And then of course not getting rid of details, but really embracing them and having them be part of the package. One of the awesome things that Derek will show, and at least now he'll show, is that we can attach details to elements, right, in our design, and so we can get creative about how we combine these things with our models. And so with that, I would just say that, you know, a successful design review might look different every time at first as you're exploring this, but at the end goal, we want those users to be able to complete their job still, right? So that's a little bit on the fundamentals. And now, as we get into the how for design review, this is where we're going to look at these 4 platforms, the native CAD software, PDF roll plots or scroll plots, 3D review platforms, and GIS. And so Ariel's going to dive into some native CAD software. Thank you.
Yeah, we can clap. Let's clap. Yeah. Okay, thanks, Allie. That was awesome. So like Allie, thank you. She deserves it. Now we're going to talk about the how. How do we consume the model, view the model, interact with it on a project where we don't have a traditional PDF plan set? And I just want to kind of point out, this is what we've done in Utah so far. These are some things we've tested. That doesn't mean it's the best way. We might say something didn't work for us, and then you might say, oh my gosh, we're doing that now, and it's amazing. That might just be, for whatever reason, every agency has different constraints, different needs, so just kind of keep that in mind as we go through this. Also, most of the demos I'll be showing on a few of these have to do with Bentley products because we use that most, but we also have done an Autodesk product, and I just want to say both Autodesk and Bentley and Esri, that Derek will talk about at the end, have been super supportive and really helpful as vendors as we've kind of tried to work through this process. So I think it's just important to like kind of take advantage of the vendors. They want to help you. Keep that in mind too. So the first one that we'll talk about is that, excuse me, native CAD software. This is basically anywhere where the designer is originating design content, data for the project. In this one that I'll talk about, it's going to be Open Roads Designer or MicroStation, but this could be Civil 3D, it could be Pro Structures, wherever you're generating the design. Make sure we can get this full screen. Okay, so first, just off the bat, if you're not familiar with CAD, this is Open Roads Designer. This is what it looks like, just to kind of get an idea of it. You can see there's a lot going on. There's a bunch of tools. There's a lot of colors, a lot of different things. Top left, I have a 3D view shown. If you're familiar with CAD, that might look really great. You might be like, oh yeah, I know what's a road, I know what's a pipe. If you're not, you might think it looks like a nightmare. So that's kind of what this will come up on who this works well for. It depends a lot on kind of your background. Here I've got a cross-section view, so since I'm in the CAD software where the design originated, it's really easy to get different views, to click on things. Here I just clicked on a pipe. I can see the name of the pipe. I can pull a ton of different information. Same thing down at the bottom. I have a vertical center line for a roadway. I can click on that and pull up a bunch of design data on that vertical center line. So a lot of people might not need this, but there is a ton of data in here and a lot of different options. So this is kind of something that comes in handy typically for like the engineer of record, maybe for owner acceptance, QA, QC. All of that data can be really helpful. For a lot of other people, it's not going to matter. A different way that we've used the native CAD software in Utah is for specifically QA, QC and tracking QA, QC through the design process. So this is on a project that I think Horrocks and Kimley Horn have worked on. That I think Nicole has a presentation on later that she'll mention. But this is in ORD, a way that we tracked the QA/QC. So I just zoomed in here to some stripes. You can see we have some colors that turned on. That's something we've set up to kind of indicate what has been checked, what hasn't been checked, and that's based on attached data attributes in ORD or MicroStation. Those are called item types. You can see here there's basically just a bunch of text attributes that say when something was checked, the date and time, whatever comments were added, and that's up to the designer to manage throughout the project. So there's a lot of data. It can be a little bit tricky once you got into like a big project with a lot of files to manage all this, but it's an option. The last thing we've kind of been utilizing this native CAD software for is for that estimating portion, pretty much the project team estimate, not so much in bidding, but during the design process, it's really easy to customize what you're seeing, pull up anything you need out of the native CAD software. So here I'm just filtering down to the one single stripe type that I'm interested in, and I can very quickly measure that stripe, see what I have in my file, do this on multiple files, pull pretty much any data that I want. We also use reports a lot in Open Roads Designer in the CAD, and again, that's just another way to quickly get a bunch of data. Right now I'm pulling up a striping report that's going to list out the location and all of the data attributes for my pavement marking. So you can see there I've got station offset. It's probably really small, but it's a bunch of data about all the stripes in the file. It's easy to get to if you know what you're doing in CAD. Probably gonna have to, there we go. Whoops, and of course I've exited full screen. There we go. Okay, so on that native CAD software, as you can kind of see, it's complicated. Typically it's pretty expensive relative to like a PDF. And so this works well for anyone who has a CAD background. For third parties, for the contractor, it can be a little bit trickier to get into. It's also, what we use in design is usually not the same software that's used out in construction, so there's usually translation. So it's not maybe the perfect model for construction, and then it's definitely hasn't worked great when we've tried to communicate out to like a utility. Sometimes they'll take CAD files, sometimes they won't, but like the public, this is basically useless. They're not gonna be able to get in there. So that was the native CAD software. The second of the four tools or methods that we've used in Utah pretty regularly on these digital delivery projects is a scroll plot. This is sometimes called a roll plot, but it's basically a giant PDF with the whole project shown, or sometimes just like kind of a component of the design shown. How we've used them, we don't put as much information as a typical plan set would have. So I'm gonna go ahead and jump in and show one that we've used. So this is one of our scroll plots from a digital delivery project. Right now I'm in Bentley's Cloud PDF viewer, but basically Adobe, Bluebeam, any PDF viewer is gonna give you pretty similar options. Like all of those other softwares, you can usually like measure things just in 2D. You can get areas, point quantities. Here I'm getting a distance. So this is also used in bidding pretty often for that 2D data specifically. You also have pretty good options for QA/QC since so many people are familiar with PDFs, and this is pretty close to what we have on a typical project. Usually folks are comfortable coming into a PDF. Here I'm making an issue. Again, most PDF softwares will let you make issues and easily kind of annotate what you're looking at. So that's something folks are familiar with, and then having it in this digital format though does make it a little bit easier to see kind of the whole project, see all the issues that are happening, and see what other kind of disciplines are up to. This is just one other kind of view of how we've used a scroll plot. This one's a little bit more detailed. You can see it looks a little bit more like CAD. There's colors turned on, there's more information. We also have embedded the layers in this case. So this gives you a little bit more info. You can kind of turn things on and off to customize what you're looking at. But again, it's just gonna be 2D, and there's not really that extra data. If you wanted to click on a pipe or see a pipe profile, that's something that would have to be provided. So scroll plots, since this is pretty much closest to what we're used to with PDF plan sets, this works great for anyone like a right-of-way, utility coordination, since they're used to getting a PDF. We also, on most of our digital delivery projects, are providing these during bidding. That's something that's kind of been requested. We've tried a few times to not have the scroll plots, but so many contractors and subcontractors are used to consuming a PDF that it's just easier to provide some type of PDF. Again, it's usually really stripped down. It doesn't have all the detail we'd have on a traditional project, but it's still available during bidding. Oh my goodness, sorry. Because I'm gonna have to get water. Okay, I think we'll make it. It's over there. I have water over here. Oh, don't make Allie get it. Oh my goodness, I'm sorry. No, I'll go. Thank you, everyone. Take a moment, take a breath.
She's got a few more, so. I can basically run now. I'm good.
Yeah, okay. Okay, thank you. That's presenter mistake 101. Don't leave your water on the other side of the room. Okay, so on those scroll plots, because it doesn't have that extra data, it's kind of limited on what we can use it for owner acceptance. Some things, like you saw the signing, that's probably enough info. Drainage, a 2D view might not be everything that you need. Lastly, because there's not like earthwork quantities or anything readily available, it's not as great for estimating or that machine guidance. There we go. So the third and the last one that I'll talk about before passing it to Derek is a 3D review platform. This is basically either like an app or a web app that can pull in or use the project models all at once, but it doesn't actually store the project models, or it stores kind of a version of them, but it's not the original CAD file. They can also usually hold like supporting documents like PDFs. So the ones that we've used mostly are like Bentley's iTwin Review Online. I think that name changes sometimes. Synchro out in the field, and like BIM 360, or I think Autodesk Construction Cloud is kind of the new iteration of that. So this is something where you can view the CAD files, but it's not the original CAD files in their native environment. Okay, so this that I pulled up here, this is from Bentley's Cloud Design Review that we've used on a couple of projects now. You can see it looks pretty much like CAD. There's a lot of data there. There's 3D data. I've got a cross section. Kind of the big difference between this and the native CAD is I don't have nearly as many tools. There's a lot less that can be done. But that also makes it easier for someone who's not familiar with CAD to kind of come in and learn a little bit faster. You also have the option to kind of click on things. There it's really small, but I'm just pulling up some project information on a specific element. So you can query the data in here. And this will jump to the same, this is the same web application, but I'm out in a 2D view. You can see I'm tracking all the project issues, and I can easily see kind of what's happening on the project. So this is pretty helpful for that owner acceptance, Again, kind of like getting a bunch of people to jump in, look at the project, see what they're concerned about, leave their comments, and then the designers can actually address them. So here, if I click on a specific comment, I can just see exactly what that person was looking at when they made that comment. And this also can be used kind of for that QA/QC, although just the kind of reason we haven't used it as much for QA/QC is it's not the actual CAD file, which on our digital delivery projects is the legal document. So usually the engineer of record at some point probably wants to look at that actual DGN file and see kind of, what am I actually signing, sending out, stamping my name on. This last little snip here is from Synchro. So this is a Bentley product that we are using out in the field. I clicked through it really fast there, but basically I'm opening a model, a federated project model that contains all of the project files kind of pulled into one place. This is from my iPad, so this is out in the field, so it's more accessible than like the browser application. If I zoom in here, and again, it's pretty similar to kind of iTwin, the way that we've used it. So you can see the 3D data. One of the kind of big reasons we've been testing this out is on our bridge projects. 2D data is just not that helpful if you've got a bridge, unless you have a ton of PDF details accompanying it. So here I'm going to open from one of our bridge projects. This is just a rebar view. It's got a ton of stuff in there. This is basically all the rebar that the design team included, laid out for the project. And I can see that. I can see this out on my iPad once I've got it downloaded anytime. And I can click on anything and gather data on the model itself. So this is something that we've been testing on a couple different projects, but especially on projects where we have a structure or something that we need a little bit more information. Okay, so to just kind of wrap up on that 3D review platform, again, it's pretty good if you need people to jump in, look at the model, see kind of the project. Works best if people have quite a bit of training, we found, or at least we need to do quite a bit of training. It's definitely easier than CAD, but I think maybe when we first started, we kind of underestimated what it would take to get everyone up to speed who needs to comment on the project. So I think as we've gone along, we've got better having a real systemic training, making sure we have people available to help if there's questions, so that anyone who needs to see the project can use it. When we've also provided this specifically Synchro during bidding a few times, and that again, I think it's been helpful, but it's definitely kind of a training leap. Also in construction, we're using it now on projects, and we're a couple months in, but I think it's really come a long way on what the contractors are using that for, how comfortable they've gotten with that 3D model. Most of these still also, I just want to point out, require kind of some access management and some form of licensing. That always varies on the product and your agency, but that is something that makes it a little bit harder if you need to share with like a city or just like one utility company for like a day. You're going to have to figure out how to get that model out to them. It's a little bit harder than just sending a PDF. So that's pretty much it on this 3D review platform. So I'll turn it over to Derek. Hopefully. Got to click. There we go. Let's talk about GIS.
Okay, so we also piloted the use of GIS for some design review. I guess first, maybe a little definition of GIS. Stands for Geographic Information System, not Geographic Information Software. That means it's very extensible and modular. So on the back end, it's driven by some type of a database. On the front end, it's visualized and analyzed by whatever type of software. So you're going to see how that provides maybe some benefits and some drawbacks to what we've done with design review here. So we take the model, we convert it into a format that a GIS can read, and then we are just going to jump into some live demos. We're going to live on the edge here. Hope everything works. So this is a map from a project that we used for a milestone review. Just a couple of things about this. The first one is it was super usable by third parties. So third party utilities, cities can access it. Still requires licensing. Everything was locked down. It required a login, but it's kind of run-of-the-mill type stuff to give people access to a GIS web map. On the left, you'll see you have different layers, and then we broke these down by discipline, mostly by CAD drawing as they were found. So you'll see everything in here is two-dimensional. I just want to put a plug in. There is capability for 3D. We haven't used a lot in this space yet, but we can show a 3D model, especially on the web. So, if we zoom in, we can click on things. We can see the information about, say, this stripe. These are the item types that were put into the model in ORD. So users can come in, they can see the information, they can pull up data about each one of the elements. Turn layers on and off. I want to see my alignments. There, now I have my stationing, my alignments, and all of my information about that. So these can be turned on, turned off. The one thing that we did here is we made it so that users could add their comments directly into the map. So, you know, all of these comments here are categorized so they have colors. That must have been a test or something. That one's utilities. Here, structure needs to be in UDOT right-of-way, so we can track those. And then on the back end, these are also assigned to stationing, so we can push those back over into ORD, and those comments can be addressed. The other thing, everything is in a structured table here as well. So we have a structured table with all the data, super easy to go, kick that out, and now we have an export of that data to use in, you know, however we want to use that information. The biggest help on this project was actually the help button. I got a lot of phone calls, myself and Zach, so that was the most used button, I think, on the whole project. We could do some things like really quickly, 22 comments about roadway, 2 comments about lighting, 4 comments about drainage. You know, where is that comment? What is that comment? So there's, you know, some pretty quick and easy ways to sort through the data and look at the data. And I think this was really useful, I think, especially for, like I said, for the cities and the third parties. And then we took this information and we put it out as a contractor preview. Is that what it was? For the project. So this is a public map. Anybody could go on, take a look. It shows pretty much the same information, other than it doesn't have the ability to comment. So the same information's here. We can come in, turn layers on and off. One thing we did out on to this one was contours, to add a little bit of a 3D element. We also provided a way to tie it to the general notes. So now we could pull in the general notes, scroll in here, and get details, say for that specific drainage profile. So that was useful as well, to show people. We also set it up, and I know it was used once or twice. I think it was actually this comment map, set up to track your location in the field, so it can be used on site. It'll show a blue dot where you're standing. Went out, looked at some right-of-way stuff and some different drainage things. Then the next thing is this ports over right into the field. So let me switch. This is where we're going to see if technology is going to work for us. Let's try and switch over to an iPad here. Maybe. This thing? No? It should be the same source. It's an HDMI.
Are you logged in? In your iPad, you have to iPad? In your iPad.
Oh, I have to do it in the iPad?
Yeah.
I'm not tech savvy enough to do that. Does anybody know how to do that? I'm not an Apple guy.
Try and pull out your Apple connection and then back in. Apple might not have recognized the HDMI was attached to the adapter. No?
Okay, we're not going to show it, but we'll talk about how cool it is. So, oh yeah, I got to do that. All right. So the nice thing about the field, again, the field app that we're using is, oh no, now I broke the whole thing.
Where's the remote for the TV? It looks like. You might be able to just find the source button.
Huh? Oh. Okay, I'm not going to touch anything. So it's a 2D application in the field, but one of the nice things, and I don't think this is really going to show it that well, but let me unfilter. So this is the data that we have coming in from the field. For this particular project. So this is a live project. that's going right now. As things are inspected, they're basically marked up like you would mark a plan set up on the hood of your truck, right? So they're highlighted. So this is fencing here, I believe. So we have some gate posts, we have some fences. And so in the field, the inspectors can go in and say, okay, well, this has been completed, or this is partially completed. I've marked it, but I haven't accepted it for payment yet for whatever reason. And that data feeds back into a central database that we can then use to, back in the office, to take a look at different items. Let me see if, 59. Yeah, right-of-way fence. So now we can take a look specifically at the right-of-way fence, and we can see, oh, okay, well, we designed, 11.2 thousand feet of fence. We've installed 9.8. We're at 88% complete on that specific pay item. Here's all of those different items with their measurements. So we can go back, review these. And so this comes back into the field. So that's another one of the benefits that we found is once we have that data and they're be able to collect that in the field in a structured format, now we can utilize that for different metrics and push that across the enterprise as we go through that. Oh, now I gotta show this again. Okay, so I guess some of the benefits and the challenges that we've run into with GIS. One of the big challenges I think that's not on here is just data interoperability. Moving the data between a CAD software into a database format has been a challenge. We've ironed out a lot of things, but it's still not quite perfect there. Some of the benefits are really revolve around the ease of use. It's stuff that a lot of people are familiar with. Cities are familiar with a web map. Inspectors, a lot of them are familiar with field maps, the Esri software that we use because they use it for other things, wetland delineation, all these other applications. So they're familiar with, the interface and the buttons and how things function. So ease of use is really a big thing. One of the things in the construction bidding side, we're working on a project right now where the contractor is going to start documenting as they build things. The inspectors are documenting it separately, and it gives them a way to reconcile their differences. Right now they're sitting down with, on that project, the inspector has field maps and he pulls up that dashboard and he says, oh, well, this is what I've inspected and here's my quantities, and the contractor says, well, I got a spreadsheet and I did 7 of these, but I don't know where they are, right? And so now we're providing an interface where both of them can collect data in a similar way, and then they can sit down, and if there's discrepancies, they can look at the same thing and understand why there's a discrepancy and resolve that discrepancy, hopefully a lot quicker and a lot easier. So overall, there's a lot of things that worked well. It's definitely not a design software. It's not a letting software. All that stuff really needs to be done in that CAD environment, but there are some benefits that we learned from using GIS.
You don't have to clap again for me, but this guy. Awesome. So yeah, we'll wrap it up here with the summary and then open it up for question. So, I think just to summarize, we started with the native CAD software, and it's pretty apparent that that's the best for design review for designers, for folks that are really in the weeds. But one of the challenges that I know a handful of DOTs have is that the people that are reviewing today aren't in the native CAD software, right? They're reviewing from plan sheets. And so there is a challenge. Maybe the answer to that is a third-party application, right? Or a different review platform, but maybe it's training and open roads, right? We're not necessarily saying what that answer solution is, but when you do move to model as the legal document, it's going to be hard without getting into those CAD files to verify, right? And be able to sign and seal them. So that's one challenge there. And then just the summary of, we went into the roll plots and the PDFs. you know, that is the most similar to what we're used to today, and it's been widely received from contractors. And so, you know, I think we do have a lot of thumbs up there. It's just trying to move into a space where we can keep the metadata from the design and have an easier way of viewing the 3D and conflicts and clash detection. But overall, lots of thumbs up for that one. And then the 3D review platform and GIS, both of those being very helpful for the design team, the reviewers, and just working through software capabilities and training right now. So awesome demos. And in, you know, just to kind of give our kind of our conclusions is that we just don't believe there is one solution. And we think it really takes a team to make a review platform that's going to be useful. I mean, I know with GIS, when we started the comment map, we came back and said, Derek, can you put the stations on there? We need stationing. And he's like, oh, let me do my magic. But, you know, it's being able to have a team that's going to help work with you to find out what those solutions are. And, you know, making those connections here today with folks. These two are awesome connections to have that can just help you as you're piloting it in your DOT. And then, you know, getting to the point where we can define those standard deliverables. What are the minimum requirements we want to have? And then let project teams have the freedom to, you know, deviate a bit, right? Say they've got a property meeting and they want to use what tools work best for them, right? And last is just that understanding your audience. You know, when you go to someone's home to talk to them about the design, maybe you bring two different methods because you don't know what they're going to take. So that's our summary. And here's our contact information. And with that, we'll open it up to questions if you guys have any. Yeah.
I noticed of the four methods, the only one that said worked well for public engagement was the GIS. So my question is, how many projects have you tested that on? How hard was it to set up? And was there a big learning curve on the locals? Did they complain about it? How do you use that?
You want to speak on the GIS?
Yeah, maybe I can. So for design review, I think we only used it on this project. As far as public comment, personally, I've probably used it on 20 or 30 projects, and it's been pretty well received. One of the benefits we see from using like an interactive map for public comment is we get super specific comments, right? Like we did one up at the University of Utah, and we got, you know, it's like, hey, I was crossing right here and I almost got hit by a car, or I was riding my bike right here and it was unsafe for this reason, or I stepped in dog poop right here, right? So we get lots of comments, but we get a lot more specific comments instead of, I hate Joe Biden, or whatever it is, those random just, you know, political comments, people get really focused. And so that's kind of the benefit we've seen with that for the general public.
You were talking about design review occurring in CAD, and sometimes it didn't work, people couldn't always get to it. Did you look at something like the Bentley View free viewer?
Yes, I don't know if we've used that lately. Bob looks like he's about to.
I think SR 30 did, didn't they?
We didn't use the Bentley viewer, no.
Okay.
I used Bentley View for looking at the DGNs. Okay.
Yeah.
There was a project that had used Bentley View. It didn't give them the civil data. You know, we didn't have the item types for the civil data. But it has been tried, but it wasn't as successful.
Yeah, I think it kind of strips some of the data out since it doesn't have all the data as ORD, but
Are you trying to do Bentley View against the DGN file? Or
yes,
against
it's specific.
the IDGN?
Ooh, DGN, yeah. I don't know, we might have tried both at one point.
We looked at the IDGN.
And did it bring stuff?
You actually, what happens when you export out is it squashes the civil data down into the IDGN model, turns it into a SQLite database. So it tries to shove more of the data down there.
Oh.
I don't know if it puts enough down there to actually satisfy the review process, but I was just curious.
Okay, no, I don't know if we've tried that.
Thank you, we'll try that.
Yes, thank you. Great tip, everyone. Okay. We'll go there.
My hypothesis with the design review has been that it's like a combination is probably going to be what most people cling on to. And I related to when you guys said like the iTwin reviewer, like people didn't take onto it as easy as you thought they would. And you know, for a lot of more senior folks, you know, that's a pretty big jump from, you know, PDF review to 3D model review. But if they're looking at scroll plot or even better like the item type
Yeah, so I think what I've seen is that folks they're strapped for time, right? And I think when you've got someone who's responsible for the design and feels very invested, you get a handful of people who are willing to go through the time to do both. But if you've got people who are used to spending a half hour running through a plan set, it's going to be a little bit tricky to say, okay, we do want you to do both. So I think there is an avenue for that, especially with the roadway, right? Someone who's going to go in and verify the grading and all your impacts. But when we're trying to roll this out on a mass scale and get people to use new tools, we've kind of seen you might want to hide and hold back the roll plot at first and just say, hey, try this tool, get in there, trust it. But no, I think you're onto something there.
So for all these reviews, how are you producing a record document of what was checked? Like for internal reviews, the comments and things are easy to save that somebody had an issue, but
Yeah.
all this stuff is very dynamic, and especially the stuff that you're checking and saying, this is good, I check off on it, I sign off on it. What's your artifact?
Yeah, no, that is the big question. I feel really passionate about this. So I think each state has their own QC requirements, right? And so I think it comes down to what are your QC requirements, and one of the things is, are you typically having a plan sheet that's highlighted and marked up completely to show that you've checked everything? If that's the case, then we have to make sure we're still providing that same level of documentation. And that's why when Ariel showed the testing of the CAD file, each element had an item type attached that said it's been checked. And so you could do that display filter to see what's been checked. And so those files were saved out as documentation. But something like, not calling out Bentley, but Bentley Design Review or iTwin, that's kind of a challenge because you can put comments in, right? And so at a minimum, a lot of these tools work well for getting a comment form. You can see all those comments and address them, but if you do have that requirement of being able to highlight everything, which I think in general, that's where we want to be. We want to make sure we've checked everything. I think that's where project teams need to get creative, and what we've got right now is the roll plots and reports, right? You brought up the item type report. That's a great point. Any of those reports that can be highlighted in the item types. But definitely a big challenge for sure. Yeah.
Continue with that thought. The application of item types as a way to track QC was very interesting. It also sounds like a nightmare.
I think it'd be great to hear Trevor's opinion behind you, who was one of the design leads and used that. Yeah, I just wanted to add really quick that I think level locking, and I personally have not looked into it enough, but I think that's going to be really critical in making sure those changes don't happen.
So I have a question kind of more so around the scroll plots. With Ohio, it's just one of the things I'm trying to gauge from other DOTs is how they move those forward. Because what we're finding is once we get outside the designers and the design review, we're getting heavy pushback. Utility companies don't want them. You can't report it right away with scroll plots. They won't accept them. Contractors in the field don't want them. So we're just getting a lot of pushback. I'm seeing all these other states saying they're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
But how did you guys get a lot of that pushback when you got outside of the design world? And how
You want to
did
answer?
overcome it?
Oh, 1 minute. Oh, thanks. I think there's a lot of people that have opinions about this in this room, and I'll take 2 seconds to say that, we've heard positive feedback from contractors, but it doesn't mean that the contractor's in your state, right? So being able to tailor to what you're hearing, I think is going to be really important. And then as far as what you need to record for right-of-way and for the utilities, I'd say that's where we have to just tailor our deliverables. So if you do need something smaller, think about it as more of an exhibit, right? And so, yeah, looking at what's the requirement on that traditional plan sheet and how can we reduce the time it takes to make that So, but yeah, we just have a minute or, oh no, we're not. We've got 10:15. We've got 10:15. I guess I would love to say if any other state would like to share the feedback, or whoever you are, yeah, feedback, that'd be great on the roll plots. Sure.
Our first review we tried it with a mega project.
Okay.
And we asked people, comment in the PDF and over here, and nobody did.
Over here.
So I would say start with a small project, less than by us, start with a small project. And then suggestion like maybe, okay, use the iTwin to do like drainage review, but like things on fencing that really wouldn't maybe be in 3D,
Mm-hmm.
do the traditional.
Yeah. I think that's something I don't want to speak for our Texas digital delivery program, Jacob, but I think that's something we're looking at for just using it as a model review and thinking about the 3D. But yeah, I mean, that's a great point is, do you put everything there or do you just do some of those 3D components? Anything to add, Jacob? I didn't speak to my, we're still in its infancy. So, but anyway, anything to add to the roll plots? No? Okay. Please.
One of our projects that we had no comments from, we went in and did, before we do a review, we go in and train them how to use the software. This particular project, we showed them everything that the program could do. They got so confused they couldn't do anything. We learned on later projects, just show them how to add a comment. Just show them how to, so we simplified. The products have a lot of capability, but sometimes you have to target, narrow it down to what they're going to need.
Thank you. I appreciate you sharing that. Yeah. Comment?
Did you have the ability to utilize the save views and the data visualizations in Design 3D?
We did, yep. And those have changed a little bit since we first started. So some of the save view technology from Open Roads is now transferring into Design Review. Yeah. So, but we did create save views and look into that. Yeah.
Seems to recall you mentioned that the engineer of record would want to check the DGNs directly and not use design review. Do you think that's going to continue, or do you think at some point there'll be, and I imagine you do that because that's the deliverable is DGN. So let's check the actual closest thing to the deliverable, is that right?
Yeah, and I would say it's not that they don't want to use other softwares, right? Like, let's say Bentley iTwin. It's just that if that's the only software you use, you run the risk of, say there's something in your design file that wasn't showing up when someone handed you. But so, yeah, so I think it's more of the fact that if you're going to sign it, you need to really understand and know every piece of data that's in there.
Historically, when we delivered PDFs, that was the deliverable.
Yeah.
That's what we checked. Now that the DGN is the deliverable and not some other data format,
Exactly.
you want to get as close to that as you can.
Anything to add? No? Awesome.
Can I just play devil's advocate for 1 minute? I'd like to hear your response. So
I'm scared.
use all these things, and I understand the benefit of doing the design review. But if you had a full 3D project, you could still deliver a project that looked like the old 2D, plan views, profile views. Why don't we? And let me just finish. If that's what our customers want, if your answer is going to be, well, we're losing the efficiency. What I hear is we're saving money. We're not giving the customers what we want, but we're saving money. So why don't we just deliver?
Yeah, so I'll give my answer, but then yes, please. So there are a few benefits to it, right? So one is the efficiency. If we can cut down on the plan production, there is the data, right, that can be lost when you have a plan sheet. And then there are things that you can only see in 3D, which are the clash detection and some of those 3D components. So I think there's benefits to being able to have a 3D review, but that's why we're not moving away from roll plots. Those are still things that are being provided because at the end of the day, they do need to be able to do their job.
Yeah, I'll just add one thing on there. This kind of came up in the last presentation with Infotech and Esri, that we're kind of moving towards the design data being used for more than construction, more than designers. There's that kind of operations maintenance end. I don't think we've worked that all out yet. So a lot of the time these digital delivery projects are harder, honestly, for the designers. And that is, I think, a future mindset shift. We have to say, you're not just, designing a road, you are messing with an existing asset that exists out in the real world. And we need to deal with that and track that. So yeah, I'm gonna say it's not perfect right now, that's for sure. But I do think if we just stop and we just say, let's just give them PDF plan sets, no one's going to give us feedback, we're not gonna learn anything. And so when suddenly operations and maintenance is like, oh my gosh, we need all this data, we're finally ready for it, data governance is figured out, we're gonna be like, oh crap, we don't have any idea how to get designers to do that. So I think that's also just kind of something we're working towards. I agree we're not there. Did you want to add something, Nicole?
Yeah, just to add that, like, when our contractors provide us feedback, they learned that they didn't know what they didn't know before, like, going into it. But once they were able to turn levels on and off, and view data in a different way and have more access and accessibility, with that data, all of a sudden they want to go back to just 2D plan sets and having to flip when they're looking at drainage and flip back when they're looking at utilities and flip when they're looking at roadway. Now they can turn it on and off at a click of a button, and see how the signpost and, the storm drain and so on and so forth all interact with one another. But then when they need to simplify it and just put the signpost in, they can turn all that back off. And so, all of a sudden they realize that there's just so much more, ability to manipulate the data, that they just had a lot of comments like, hey, we don't want to go back for that. We want this intelligence and this, smart way to interact with.
Yeah, just a sec. Megan had to raise your hand first.
So another thing is it's really like what you're trying to get out of the data. So with traditional plan sets, right, a lot of people are looking at data and moving it over and copying it over. And there's a lot of human error in that. And we check it, people copy down wrong numbers. Getting rid of things like grading plans and providing the break lines, their machines are consuming that data. And so that's probably what they actually prefer once they get used to it. But somebody like a landscape contractor, they're going to want to see the plan because they don't have the software. And whether that's a plan or something digital for them to view, they just don't care about the 3D. And so really looking at which aspects of design would need the 3D and could benefit versus the ones that don't is important in terms of a design to build situation. And then for asset management of data in the future, that's where the 3D helps DOTs and other municipalities to move on that data.
Okay, Jacob, do you want to?
Real quick, and also in Texas, we've talked to our agency a lot, and one of the things that we've found is they're using our plan sets to make models anyway. So they're utilizing the XSR files or our cross sections, and they're creating their own plans. The difference is, their own models. The difference is the models they're creating are interpolated between. Whenever we give them a model, it'll be a closer to actual model. So when we start talking earthwork and things like that, or even base traffic control, it's a better representation. But they're already doing that. So that's kind of how the benefit is.
Okay, you go first. Sorry.
Kind of along the line of this review process and the use of electronic data, one of the questions I wanted to ask was, are you doing buildability? Because the comment that you would pass your model out to the construction equipment, we found that our models are really good for quantities, but if you stick them out there to do paving, you're going to get click pops running all the way down the roadway because there's little cliffs and ditches and kinks in the model, especially going through steep transitions. We're actually looking at some software that will critique the model after the fact so the designer knows, yeah, you got a great model for quantities, you got to fix some problems in there with the transitions, or you're going to have a model that when they stick it on the equipment, they won't use your model, they'll stop accepting them, and they'll go back to building their own models in their own system.
Do you want to say that? Okay. I don't know if we have like a set process. I do kind of want to hear about that software, but I think we've done that kind of over time. When we set up some of our standards, our like latest CAD standards, we did have contractors on that team who were providing input, and I know a lot of like project teams have themselves take in the design data and like put it into Trimble or something. So I would say we don't have it set, but I think that's really important. I think that's something we're trying to do, but probably a little more piecemeal. You want to add?
I think you're being modest. Yeah, so their break line process documentation makes sure that those models can go in and that there's no question. So the process that has been laid out, it's checked through Trimble Business Center, and then there are flags that come up, and so the goal is to deliver flagless. And so, I mean, then that comes down to that one deliverable, right, which is those break lines.
So when you say in Trimble Business Center, it's sort of an obligation of the construction team to clean the model prior to sticking it on the equipment, not the designer to clean it.
Right now, it's the design team in Utah.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, definitely, if you have other softwares, open to that for sure. But I think there was one other question, comment. Yeah.
Beyond QC to QA,
Mm-hmm.
what other documents have you created to audit some sort of assurance? You don't have to go back through the files, make sure that everything's done.
Yeah, I mean, for UDOT, we have the QA form, and so it's just using that same QA form, having to work with the team to figure out how did they do their QC, and there are a lot of checklists that are filled out for that. I know that when we talk about owner acceptance in other states, that also might be thought about as QA as well, right? The overall you're verifying. So I think QC and QA do mean different things in each state. Awesome. Well, it's been a pleasure. I'm glad you guys were able to collaborate with each other. Thank you all for joining.